And this is a hard-working, good community. It's a community where the residents are really what I consider to be the first responders. They were here when the city closed down. They were providing the basic services for this city. They were in the supermarkets, the delivery men and women. They drove the Uber cabs and delivered food. This is a community that's representative of the quality of New Yorkers. And to hear that right here in this community, you had a well-organized, total disregard for human life. The people who were shot here were not members of gangs. For the most part, they were ordinary New Yorkers. 10 people were shot. That is a mass shooting. And it appears as though it was gang related. And trust me when I tell you, if you allow gangs to get footholds in this city, we have a real problem. This is a crisis. When two people follow on a motorcycle or two other wearing face coverings shoot at a crowd, that is a signal of gun violence out of control. Unacceptable. And then when you add it with the incident of a lieutenant that was shot a few days ago, where the person who did the shooting had over 20 arrests, out on bail for a gun-related issue, and was able to walk the streets, a total disregard of public safety. And what's interesting, when you do a real analysis, there are a small number of shooters and a small number of gun dealers that are providing the guns. It's about focusing our attention on the shooters and focusing our attention on those who are providing the illegal guns in our city. We have to come to grips with the fact that we're living in a city where someone can drive up on a moped, shoot people, hop back on the mopeds, and get away safely. We have to come with the grips that we are losing the grip on public safety, and we have to respond immediately and treat this like the crisis that it is. It is unimaginable that this is taking place in a safe community like this. This has traumatized the community and some of the residents that I have communicated with. I'm going to put out my call again. The same way we responded to terrorism in the city with a joint terrorist task force, we need a joint gangs and guns task force with the federal, state, and city coordination to make sure that we can do information sharing, go after the guns that are on the street, stop the flow of guns, and take down these crews to make sure we send a loud message that we are not going to allow our city to be controlled by this level of gun violence. So our challenge is not only the number of guns on the streets, but also the violent crews. This gang is associated with the same membership that took the life of young Junior up in the Bronx. So they are spreading throughout our entire city, and they feel as though they can do it with a level of impunity, and that is unacceptable. And so the Joint Guns and Gang Task Force will require sharing of information and resources for gun investigations, allowing federal agencies to work together more effectively with local, state law enforcement to track illegal guns and go after those who are using these guns. When you prosecute on the federal level, you're more likely to get harsher penalties, and you get the resources that's needed to take down the men and women who are carrying guns and take these guns off our street. In addition to the release of existing resources from the federal government and high-level coordination, collaboration, it would allow DOJ and ATF to target gun violence. That federal databases and some investigation details must be shared with existing Joint Task Force members. We have to share the information. This is what we did during 9/11. That is why the city became safer from a terrorist attack, because it was about information sharing. And so in addition to the task force, I'm also calling for Congress to fully fund community violence intervention at the federal level with President Biden's gun violence initiative and agenda. It's so important that we get this done, we get the bill passed, and get the resources on the ground. $5.2 billion in this CVI funds. It's a holistic approach of dealing with gun violence. And lastly, I've made this clear, and we saw the changes in some of the crime on the subway system as well as on the street when we beef up our enforcement, and it doesn't have to be heavy-handed, but it should be precision. We need the anti-gun unit, plainclothes unit, to send a message that we're going to have the element of uncertainty with the element of omnipresent. I say let's reinstate this unit to allow them to do their job, well-trained officers wearing body cameras so that we can see how the policing is carried out. A significant increase in funding for the city office to prevent gun violence, an important entity that we must fund properly. Shifting resources into the Gun Violence Suppression Division, highly specialized NYPD unit, and let's get cops off desk duty and get them on the duty of protecting our streets. The mayor increased, about 300 officers are back to a uniform patrol. We need to do a full movement of officers out of desk duties and back on uniform patrol. And we need to, again, use our port authorities, our entry points. We need to coordinate with the Port Authority to ensure that we do spot checks, use the technology that's available to stop the flow of guns coming up the Iron Pipeline on I-95. Create a special prosecutor for illegal guns citywide so that we can zero in on gun and gang violence, and beef up our crisis management team, better coordination between police and the crisis management team. My big fear here, this appears to be some form of internal beef. What comes next is retaliation. We can't have the retaliation. Crisis management teams should identify all the hot spots, and that is the role they play to prevent the retaliatory shootings that can take place after. It's no secret that these shootings that you're seeing across the city impacts Black, brown, and immigrant communities. Our community deserves the public safety that they need and the justice they deserve. We could have them both, but we must treat this like the crisis that it is. And I want to ensure that on all levels of government, we are approaching this as the matter of urgency. We can't allow gang violence to continue to believe that it will control the streets of our city. And far too many local crews and gang members, they believe that. And we have to send a strong message, not in New York, that we want to raise our children and families in.
Special hello to the families that were impacted by last night's shooting. This was the epicenter of the pandemic. Let it not be the epicenter of gun violence here in the city of New York. This has been a streak of shootings that have taken place in the area of Corona, Elmhurst, and Jackson Heights for the past couple of months. It's extremely important for us to recognize that we need to do something to bring in a sense of safety to our communities. We've made investments at the council, and especially in this district, by making sure that we can bring more cure violence programs to this community, that we fund the Saturday Night Lights program that's going to get kids out of the streets and into a productive forum where they can be working together with the community and the police. What you saw last night is what you see in the movies. Rolling up in mopeds, assassination attempts that have been going on. It's Hollywood, except it's a reality that's happening here. I was born and raised in this community. I've lived my entire life in Corona. I've never had a fear of walking the streets of my own community until now. It was 10:40 by a restaurant where a family was celebrating a birthday. Imagine that, where you feel that you can't walk out of your house, go to the supermarket, go do your laundry or celebrate a birthday together with your family. This is not the New York that we all know. We need help, and we need it now. It is important for us to secure the public safety of our communities. I have walked the streets of my neighborhood. The number one concern that all residents have had is public safety. We need to start making real investments if we really want to change the course of where our youth is going. So when we're talking about building affordable housing and rezonings that happen, let's make sure that we're including as part of that we have community centers that give these kids the opportunity to go somewhere productive. So I'm really saddened by the events that are happening here. We are asking for help. We want to make sure that these streets are being patrolled, that the businesses here don't have to suffer, that the community here doesn't have to suffer another loss of life to the tragedies that we see on a daily basis that are happening now in New York City to gang violence.
Our crisis management teams, they have a clear analysis of what's called hotspots. These are locations in each precinct that are known gang and guns activity. We need to have every hotspot covered. Right now we don't. We may have 15 hotspots in a precinct, we will cover 1 or 2. That is ineffective. We need to cover every hotspot, and then the intel must be used to take down gangs. We have to go after the crews. It's a small number of shooters and gangs that we are allowing them to continue. We need to have precision policing in neighborhoods like this to go after those known shooters. We know the known shooters. Let's go after them and take down those crews.
Vision?
Loose connection. When we did the JTTF, I was a police officer at the time, we made the decision after September 11th attack. We said never again will we allow the terrorists to take a foothold. We need ATF, we need FBI, we need the state police, we need NYPD, and then we need to expand it with crisis management teams. We need to expand it with mental health professionals. We need a full comprehensive approach of every level of law enforcement and the support services so we can go after this entire problem, how we feed gun violence and how we need the immediate response. Right now, that loose relationship between the ATF and the NYPD, that does not go far enough. We need a more comprehensive approach if we're going to tackle this in a real way.
Thanks. And then unrelated on masks, the mayor tomorrow is poised to announce some sort of new restrictions, mask mandate perhaps. Like, is he acting quickly enough? Do you agree with sort of the pace at which he's moving?
I still wear my mask indoors on the subway system. I still wear my mask whenever I feel uncomfortable. I believe we should err on the side of caution, and I encourage the mayor to respond quickly to really put in place the necessary mask procedures that is coming directly from science. If the federal government has a recommendation and the local government, we need to make sure that we implement it right away. We don't want to go backwards. COVID is a formidable opponent. We need to pivot and protect at the same time. And New Yorkers are ready. New Yorkers, we don't want to go back to where we were. And I think it's imperative that we ensure we get the vaccinations, encourage it more in various communities, but whatever the health professionals are telling us to do, let's implement it right away.
Anybody from the cameras, the networks?
Dr. Adams, you mentioned about the 9/11 style task force. Obviously, the controversial programs have been controversial for certain marginalized communities. You mentioned you want to have a similar program for gun violence. How would you tell people that feel that in the last 20 years about marginalization with certain policies like
lesson learned. I was an advocate when I saw the Handshoe Act attempted to change that. I was an advocate when I saw innocent young men rounded up on Coney Island Avenue and put into the federal penitentiary. I stood in front of that prison and called for the release of those innocent young people. Lesson learned. Transparency, right officers assigned with a clear mission of what the accomplishment must be. We cannot allow the fear of the abuse of authority to get in the way of ensuring public safety. There were so many lessons that I learned during that period of time. We won't repeat them, but we cannot allow this level of violence that we're seeing on our streets.
Yo me crié aquí en este vecindario y nunca he tenido un temor de caminar las calles a la violencia que ha existido en Nueva York.